You're listening to the Soju Sessions, episode 20, on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. I'm your host, Crispy, also known as Crispy Wonton, or simply just Anton, and on today's show, Anita from the main show joins me on a fantastically magical retrospective on her history with Red Velvet and a deep discussion on Red Velvet's sixth mini-album, Queendom. Shout out to Anita for dropping some magical realism to get my head spinning about storytelling. It was an excellent conversation, a great look back, and a wonderful celebration of Red Velvet. Coming up, my chat with Anita on the Soju Sessions. Joining Soju Sessions this week, the retro-loving agent of chaos and literal flower from the main show, Anita. Welcome, Anita.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you coming on. We talked a little bit offline, but I was looking for a topic to get you back on, and you had mentioned on episode 151 the Girls' Generation reunion on You Quiz on the Block.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it got me to think of, girl groups that have this connective tissue over time, over many generations of music, and especially over the past decade, right? And coincidentally, Red Velvet came back this week with their sixth mini-album, Queendom, and it really got me to think a little bit deeper about their connection, how they inspired K-pop, and the way that they've really been passed the baton from SNSD to their success on their own, and now kind of going into that mature phase in their career with aespa just right around the corner. So I think this is a good time for us to celebrate them.
Yes. Yeah. 7 years.
Yeah. So just, right off the bat, getting your history with Red Velvet, what was your first memory of the group and their music?
So it was really interesting because prior to the debut or formal introduction to Red Velvet from SM, they had like a weird, I wouldn't call it weird, but a very off thing that they did because they never did it again. It was called SM Rookies, which I think started in 2013, 2014. And they kind of were introducing like trainees, and they were saying like, oh, this member is good at this, they're this age, that sort of stuff, and they weren't people weren't sure how they were going to end up being grouped, and some of the members of Red Velvet were introduced through that SM Rookies thing. I think it was 2014 for them, I might be getting that wrong, but around that time. So I remember hearing about them way before their actual group was formed, and also other SM artists. I think Kyohyun from Super Junior mentioned Sugi as like, oh, she's a really good singer, you should look forward to it, and they started to like release teasers of them doing like covers or dancing, so that was like the very first thing I remember about Red Velvet, like the SM Rookies that happened 2014, 2013, and like them being kind of like spoken about but not quite sure how they were going to be formed. And then they released like Happiness, and it was more concrete. But yeah, I think that was the very first.
Yeah, no. I got into Red Velvet a little bit later, but I remember going back and watching their music videos and kind of reading up on their history. And the SM Rookies thing is really fascinating because they hadn't done it since then, right?
Right. Yeah, I think at the time I was thinking like, oh, is this going to be like a staple thing where all of the upcoming members of groups are going to be introduced through this program or whatever website thing they had going on for them? But it kind of didn't stick around because I don't think a lot of the members of aespa or NCT were not introduced through that. So I don't know. I guess it was a one-time thing they tried, and Red Velvet and some members of NCT kind of were introduced like that, but it didn't become like a norm for sure.
Yeah, definitely not a norm, but I remember it being very exciting to go back to see kind of that footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the Irene and Silgi like introduction choreography, I think.
Right.
And it's just fun that like it kind of turned into the subunit a little bit later on last year.
That's
Kind of seeing
true.
how that like kind of flourished and came together as they are further along in their careers. For me, it was back in like about 2017. I was getting back into K-pop, and it was Bad Boy. And
Ah, it's a good one. It's a good
right?
introduction right there.
Yeah, because I had always been a Girls' Generation fan since like 2010, so very much in the bubblegum, like happy, like K-pop girl group. So that was my my conception of K-pop girl groups at the time. So going into Bad Boy and understanding the pass off from SNSD to Red Velvet, I was thinking like, oh, maybe they'll do something similar. And it was a complete flip. It was this R&B sounding like very modern take on the genre. And that's what really let me dig a little bit deeper into Red Velvet and their music and kind of the direction that they went into from that SM Rookie beginning that you mentioned. And I think what was really interesting was just like a kind of differentiation between Girls' Generation, FX, and then Red Velvet. But also the connectedness, because it did kind of feel like there was a natural progression between the three groups. They all seemingly interacted with each other on a lot of variety shows, and I felt like a very sense of connection and like family with the way SM kind of presented that, right? You know, that kind of helps also kind of build the fandom and like build my interest, because I, you know, was trying to go into something new, but I needed like a foundation piece. So SNSD into Red Velvet was kind of nice. Yeah, and then just, you know, trying to learn about Red Velvet, you know, getting into their music a bit. It was an adventure, and I did want to ask you. So, as you started to get into Red Velvet a little bit more from the time of the SM Rookies, what appealed to you most throughout that progression?
I think prior to their formal debut, I wasn't really sure what kind of sound they were gonna have. They obviously seem very talented vocally, dancing wise. But having FX come before them, like that's the most recent one from SM, I kind of thought like, oh, it could be anything, because FX had a very experimental sound as well in some of their discography, and also in their B-side. So I thought like, oh, it could go a lot of ways. And then when they made their debut with Happiness, honestly, I was not a huge fan of Happiness. I don't know why. I think it like it's very, very poppy, super, super bubblegum, very positive. And I thought they did a really good job with the song. But I guess for some reason I thought like, oh, I felt like we could have gone a different route, or it seemed like they were gonna tease something a little different. And I don't know. I guess I was okay. Happiness was okay for me at the time, and then the progression of ice cream cake to Dum Dum. I think when Dum Dum hit with their full album, The Red, I was like, oh, okay, this is really, really cool, because I really liked their sound, how it was solidified by then, which was a mix of like the Red and the Velvet. I think that was the biggest appeal for me, like the really, really poppy Red sound, and then the more R&B kind of smoother Velvet side that they also had for the group, which was really cool for me.
Yeah, I think it was a really brave choice that SM made with this group in particular, where you have Red Velvet, you have that name, but then leaning into that concept musically, right? With Happiness being like that exaggerated, like very bubblegum, very pop, red, distinctly red. And then a little bit later, I think they had Automatic and Be Natural. I was like,
yes, that difference between the two, I was like, oh, we can do both.
yeah, and that was like the very clear distinction of Velvet, right? So you had those two like dichotomies at that time, and then like you said, Ice Cream Cake going into Dum Dum, we're getting the blend of both Red and Velvet, and I think that's kind of the beauty of their artistry over the years, where I feel like they have influenced a lot of blending of sounds, right? Blending of genres, but also, you know, being very distinct with the two genres. You know, going off of that, like, how do you feel like they've evolved and changed with those two genres over time? And how do you feel like, some of the songs were hits and misses, of course, but do you feel like they've had a big impact and influence on how other artists and other agencies have approached music?
Definitely. I feel like having listened now to the most recent mini album from theirs, I would say that I still feel like there's Red and Velvet aspects to their discography. But I think now, at this point, it's become more of a spectrum now. Like, I don't think it's a dichotomy by any means now. So, like, things might be leaning a little bit Velvet or a little bit Red, but it's not one or the other now, which I think it's interesting. Because maybe it's also adding a bit of maturity to their sound, where like it doesn't have to be Red or Velvet; it can just be both, and it works. I think even with this most recent release, I think we mentioned it in the main podcast that we didn't feel like it was Red or Velvet, but it felt like it was still Red Velvet because it was mixing it more so. So I think with the maturity, with the years, they've kind of had a bit more of mixing of the sounds. And in regards to like their influence, I would say that it's kind of also more common to see girl groups that don't lean heavily on only one sound now. I feel like there's a lot of girl groups now that might do a comeback that's super, super bubbly, and then next thing you know, it's girl crush, and it's completely 180. So I guess that would also tie into that maybe, where it's more feasible, like it's seen as something that people want to see girl groups doing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where it allowed a lot of girl groups to experiment. Because I do feel like there was a period in the mid 2010s where it was very much following the trend. It was either your bubblegum or your chic, your edgy, right? And a lot of girl groups were not in a negative way, but just like one note, right? That was their shtick. That was their thing. What sets Red Velvet apart in that respect, where they are able to kind of go between the two spectrums of Red and Velvet, pop, bubblegum, and R&B?
I mean, I don't know if there's one specific thing that helps them do that. I would say that a lot of the members also have that kind of quality. I think looking at their vocals and a lot of their choreography, like it's a lot. Some of the songs might be like super, super airy. Like the range is pretty high. So, but the choreo is also like pretty intricate, and it's nothing like that. I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's like a bad rep for girl groups where like they don't go as hard as boy group choreography. But I don't know. I feel like with Red Velvet's choreography and how they tied into their music, it's kind of seem like, oh well, we can do something as a girl group that is also kind of complicated and just as complex and hard, but in a different way, with the guy group. So I feel like that kind of aspect helps. I don't know. I think that's what I enjoyed most about Red Velvet. Their choreo and how it doesn't compete with their sound, like it helps it.
Yeah, musically, it's a really well put together package between their vocal quality. Absolutely one of the top tier vocalists in the industry, right? Between Seulgi and Wendy, and even Joy with her solo this past year. I feel like she definitely flexed, right? And kind of goes into a little bit of how we get to know our groups and kind of the things that we attach ourselves to. At one point, I got really into the Red Velvet rabbit hole of learning everything I could about like various members. And one thing really stuck out to me about Wendy, how she's Korean Canadian, and she received an award from Obama for academic excellence when she was in 8th grade. And kind of a very similar story of her coming to Korea, coming to a different culture and adapting. Very similar to a lot of other idols who go into a new environment at a very, very, interesting period in their life, right? Where it's a developmental period, right? Where it's very difficult for them to kind of grasp a lot of the concepts of the world. but she is able to intellectualize and articulate a lot of really positive messages. And I feel like I've attached to kind of the sensibility of Wendy being a citizen of the world, where she can connect with so many people in a lot of different ways, just through like small tidbits and pieces that she's kind of said throughout the years. Is there any one particular moment with Red Velvet between their music or a variety experience that stood out to you?
I think for me, I've been into Red Velvet's music more than the variety side of the group. I guess mostly because around the time where they started blowing up, I was also in college and I was busy doing other things. But one thing that I still have like super ingrained in my mind is listening to their first full album, The Red, which is probably one of my favorite K-pop albums so far. Like, I would rank it up there because I just really, really liked it, and I had it on loop for those months my freshman year of university. And I don't know, I guess that period of time where they were also gaining more popularity, they were kind of blowing up with Dum Dum, and listening to the sound, to their sound at that time, which was definitely more poppy, but there's still like a lot of songs that were like a little bit slower. Time Slip, shout out to that song. It's a really great song. A little bit on the slower side, but very, very, very nice. I think it kind of became like the soundtrack of my freshman year of university, that album. And I don't know, I feel like I always go back to it because it has that bit of nostalgia, and I still find that sound in Red Velvet nowadays. I feel like I've also like associated Red Velvet with like, oh, school, like having to study for exams back in the day. So that's kind of the nostalgia that I hold with the group as well.
Yeah, and I feel like music does that, right? Where it can be linked to a very specific period in someone's life. Was there any particular memory in college while listening to that album that really formed kind of a piece of yourself that stuck with you?
Let's see. I don't know exactly if there was like a specific moment, but I do feel like because it was one of those songs or albums that I was playing when I was like, oh, stressing out about exams. I got to study for this, staying up, pulling all-nighters, trying to stay awake. I don't know. I feel like you almost feel like the journey of the album in the same journey of studying and going through your own struggles in school. So I guess that's why I like the album so much, because I feel like, there was the highs, there was the lows, and then we wrap it up really well at the end, and then we loop it again because I still had more work to do. But yeah, I feel like it definitely felt more like a companion, right? One of those albums where it was more of a companion throughout those all-nighters and studying, staying up, trying to finish some work.
Yeah, and that's a really beautiful sentiment, right? Where music does that with you, where it joins you on your journey. It's your companion through the ups and the downs and all the experiences in between. And kind of fast forwarding to present day Red Velvet, they've been through a lot over the past 603 days, as Doug mentioned on the main show.
Yes.
So the Reveille Festival finale came out in December 23rd, 2019 with Psycho. So that was the last group activity they had. Funny enough, Doug actually gave me that album for a giveaway last year, or 2 years ago now.
Oh, cool.
So that album will always have a special place in my heart.
Nice.
I will always remember that from getting the little photo card with Doug's handwriting and like the Soju Talk stickers. It was very meaningful. But the members have gone through a lot with Wendy's injury, being a down point, and similarly to you, right? How you described the journey of the ups and downs, where they did have a little bit of an up with Silky and Irene with their unit during the summertime. Joy filmed a K-drama, which is amazing.
True.
Only One Person is the title. I think it's coming out soon. I've been looking out for it. Or is it already out? I think it's already out. I don't really have the date.
Not too sure, but I know she's been acting. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Wendy solo when she came back, Joy solo, and then Yeri's just been everywhere. She is very popular in Korea. Everyone loves her. But they're back together, and it brings that nostalgia. It brings those happy feelings, those emotions. How does it feel for you to have the group back together, promoting with Queendom?
I feel like definitely a little bit of relief and excitement mixed together. I think there was a lot of I can only imagine how like the Rebel Loves, right, their fandom, how they would have felt this whole almost 2 years since there was no group activities. A lot of probably uncertainty, a lot of doubt, like they're gonna renew their contract, or they're gonna stay together, they're gonna disband. So I'm have a sense of relief knowing that okay, well they're still working together. There's stuff being produced for them, which I think is the most important thing when the company also sees the future, right, in the group. So I'm glad that that's what it looks like. I'm glad that they're putting out stuff now. And yeah, it's hard to believe it's been almost 7 years. I think it's already been seven years. The anniversary already passed. But yeah, I feel like Red Velvet doesn't feel like an older group, but I know that they are by numbers. I don't know. I feel like maybe because they've always been there hasn't been like a huge gap in their production. So these 600 and some days that they were actively promoting as a group felt kind of long and odd, but it feels good that they're back together finally.
Yeah, I think relief is a great way to put it, where I think sometimes we forget, at least I forgot sometimes, that it's been so long until you see that number, 603 days, and you're like, wow, they really haven't been a group together. And it's just really good to see them all healthy and well and back together, being successful on their own with their own projects, but coming back together and showing just the polish and shine that they are as the seniors. I guess it's kind of weird to say that, right? Senior group of K-pop right now.
True.
Yeah. And with them coming back together, kind of reflecting on their music, just kind of thinking through like Red Flavor and when that came out and how like iconic that was. Were there any like cornerstone timestamp moments like in Red Velvet that really signified like, oh, this is it, this is the group, this is the group that will mark the era of Gen 3, I suppose? Was there any moment like that for you?
I think there were definitely a lot of songs that I felt were like, oh yeah, this is super popular. I can definitely say that Red Velvet is top tier for sure. I don't know what rank, but they're in that top tier. So I would say Red Flavor, of course, but also Bad Boy. I feel like when Bad Boy came out, I heard it everywhere. I feel like a lot of people were doing covers. A lot of people were doing the dance. The English version came out as well, so I feel like, oh, so we're also trying to go for the Western market. I don't know. I feel like Bad Boy was definitely another push. I feel like they were already established by that point, but another like additional push into a wider audience, I think. And it's a really good song. I think even now, going down their title tracks is definitely up there for me.
Yeah, it's weird to think like it's been so long, like to zoom out, right, and to kind of like look at it from like the present day perspective of like what those songs have meant. Because I do like love those songs, but really thinking back and being retrospective about it, it's just crazy to think that impact of Red Velvet back in those like heydays. But now we're kind of in the present and moving into like a different era of Red Velvet. Like you said earlier, with the maturation of their sound, the blending of the red and the velvets. We have Queendom arriving, returning. We are here. The group is back with Queendom. It released earlier this week. And, I think if you're a Revel, I can never pronounce the fandom name. Revel.
I think it's Revelove, yeah, Revelove.
Revelove. If you're a Revelove, you are very happy to see them back. If you're just a K-pop fan, I think it's nice to have this familiarity. It's like friends coming back from a long trip. And you know, I love this album. I've been looping it for the past few days, finding different pieces of it that speak a little bit to me here and there. Looking at the English translations and kind of feeling the story. Because I'm all about story when it comes to music. I'm not as attuned to the musical composition parts of the crew and the dancing ability that you have, Anita, to really dig deep into the choreography and the styling. But I love the storytelling. So with that said, Queendom, the mini album, the 6th mini album, what were your first impressions listening to the song and then the album?
I think it's been a couple of days since we covered in the main podcast, and I've also been listening to the title track and the album a few times since then. But I feel like first impression, very first thing, I thought like, oh, this is nice, this is good. But I did feel it was safer than what I would expect from Red Velvet. I think when I think a lot of their title tracks, like Zimzalabim, it's sometimes it's very out there. Sometimes it's a little outside the box, and I don't know, mixing a lot of stuff that I wouldn't think of. But it's interesting, and I felt like it wasn't in that sense that experimental. But I feel like it does give off a very interesting, I would say, cool and positive vibe. I think I got that a lot from the album as well, where it's a house track, but it's very how do I say, like, very cool, very how do I say, like, very chill, like what you admire, I guess, like a very cool person, that type of vibe. And I don't know, I feel like I enjoyed the concept that they had going on, and this mixing of the red and the velvet. I feel like in this title track more than others, I feel like I definitely felt that. Where I couldn't pick out, like, would I consider this red? Would I consider this velvet? I don't know. I feel like it's in the middle. I think it's somewhere where the two meet, and it's interesting how they're going to develop this sound. I think there's still ways to go with this, and they definitely have the means to do it even more, for sure.
What did you think about the visual component of this comeback? Whether it was the music video, the concepts, the teasers, is this the reintroduction to Red Velvet that the general audience can attach to, as far as saying this is a staple in K-pop, this is Red Velvet?
I don't know. I feel like they definitely had a lot of visual cues in the music video, where even just like literally they had like name tags kind of appear next to the members, like as credits, they showed up on the screen. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Also, the way they did it was really cool, because it felt like it was magical type of thing going on, and that kind of tied into the concept of the music video. But I guess I do agree. I feel like some visual cues in the music video do feel like, oh, we're going through the members, close-up shots of each one of them, and they each have like a personality in the music video. Like we had Silgi, like a type of security guard, and then Wendy as more of a, I wouldn't say like a teacher, maybe, I don't know, something. That's what I got, but based on the outfit and how she was kind of the first one to like open the door and like introduce Yeri, who seemed like a student to, or like a new member to the group, and that kind of mimics the Red Velvet story, how Yeri was added into the group later on. So I feel like, yes, there are a couple of visual cues that kind of mimic the story of Red Velvet. There was also like a couple of shots where I'm like, I feel like I've seen this in a previous music video. I think the sitting at a table, like a round table thing, I feel like I've seen this somewhere. I can't point it out exactly in what other music video, but it felt like it's familiar. And I guess for new people, new fans, they're gonna associate it when they go back on their previous stuff. So it's cool.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a lot of homages to old Red Velvet songs, music videos, and concepts. The tea party, the like Alice in Wonderland
Yes.
tea party in like the field in the grass, like definitely happiness vibes. Definitely just like the weird fantastical like elements of Red Velvet, where they leaned into like the fruit and the food and
Right. Yes.
all the interesting things. So I think like definitely like trying to remind the older fans, the fans who have listened to them but may have fallen off, hey, like these are all the things, these are all the visual images that you loved, and we're kind of bringing it back with a little bit of maturity. And I wanted to kind of bring it into the perspective of some of the new fans, because we do have some younger members of the nation who are now just finding Red Velvet, and we've had some great discussions with Doug setting up like the VIP channels, especially for Red Velvet.
Nice.
And you know, giving recommendations and allowing them to kind of discover and explore what sounds work for them. And I do feel like this is a nice entry point for them, because like you said, it is safe, but I think very accessible in a lot of ways.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does hit a lot of the really good things that SM does, for lack of a better way to put it. I think the introduction with the piano, the keys into like the deep house, but then it's like an upbeat deep house where it's like it picks up.
Yeah.
And then the harmonies are back. We got them back. I'm so
Love
excited.
the harmonies.
Yeah. And like you said, I think the fantastical elements are amazing. I think those are the kinds of things that stick with me the most. The magic witch delivery service, I suppose.
I love that. I love when there's witchy, whimsical stuff. Very nice.
Perfect. Okay, so all right. I had a thing written, but I want you to go into it. Tell me why you attach to the magical whimsy of some of these music videos and stories.
I don't know. I feel like when it comes to music video preferences, like I kind of enjoy it when there's a bit of a storyline or like a very concrete concept. I know some people are not huge fans of lore and stuff, but I like it when there's some amount. I think it's interesting because it gets you thinking like, oh, what is this referencing, or like what could this mean? Is this something connected to the previous music video, Last Comeback, or something like that? I think that's cool. So I feel like having some sort of concept, and in this case, like the very whimsical, witchy type thing, I don't know. It adds to the song, and it makes it also even easier for me. Like, oh yes, this is that one song, and then this music video, this is what happens there. It makes it more memorable to me, and the whimsical thing, I don't know, I think it's super cool. I like magical realism in fiction. I like some sort of magic in music videos is cool too. Also, this type of the magic that they were portraying in the music video, I felt like it had a very cool vibe. I don't know, very cool is the cool is the adjective I'm using with this whole comeback. Because it feels very effortless, very chill. The outfits were really nice, very fashionable, very very pretty color palette, very purple, pinky stuff. I don't know, I feel like it didn't feel cheesy. It felt like this is modern magic, if that makes sense.
No, that's a perfect way to describe it, because I had written that down as well. Modern
yes.
magic, excellent. And the delivery service thing, when I was thinking about it later, it's like, oh, it kind of has like Kiki delivery service, but not baked goods and not coming of age. It's very much these mature women who generally have things figured out and kind of just want to share with the rest of the world that you can be magical, that you can be great. I think the line, we're all queens and kings and we don't need a crown, right? And it's like, oh,
right.
that's very uplifting and empowering, because again, it's like this idea that everyone's unique and beautiful. You have something to offer. And I think it's that offering, that sharing, that delivery idea. That's a little bit of a metaphor for like sharing what you have with the rest of the world. And I feel like that really ties in with the magic, because again, you know, magic is what you make it. Magic is kind of the way that you perceive and live your life. And hopefully you kind of see that everyone, especially like yourself, has magic to share and offer.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah, definitely a celebration. If we had a fantasy podcast, we could do 2 hours on magical realism, because I love I love reading and stuff like that. So, oh man, Anita, I am very distracted now. I don't know where we are. Okay, so All right. So yes, I love everything you said about that song and the color palette. Absolutely, purple is one of my favorite colors. So just seeing the way the purple was used in like the cosmic fantasy, the cosmic magic, and then the
Yes.
outfits at the end, I think those were like excellent.
I think those were my favorite. The purple black type of outfits where they were in the like a very, what is it? Like a background where like the sky constellation.
Yeah, it was like an
Yeah.
open room.
Yes, yeah, that one. Yes.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love kind of Yeri being in the center of it, and you know,
She gets her wand.
she has her wand. And it's kind of funny that she always fits in the archetype of being like the younger little sister that everyone centers around. But you know, it's very cute, and I think it's very fitting, and it's not done cheesy like you said. I think it's just it's all done in a way where it highlights each member perfectly. So yeah. Shout out to Silgi and her orange hair and her glasses. I love
She makes it work. It looks so good on her, but I feel like, dang, if I tried that, I don't think it would work.
You know, Anita, you know, you have magic. I'm sure if you tapped into it a little bit, perhaps it'll work. You know,
Perhaps.
I'm
Yeah.
just, gonna give you a little bit of reassurance. So perhaps one day you'll take the leap and grab a magic wand and tap your hair to change your color. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Change the colors.
So with the album, kind of like you said, there's a nice blend of red and velvet. Listening to the album this entire week, I would say, yeah, most of the album hits a lot of those notes. What were some of your favorite songs and songs that stood out to you on the album?
Okay. So my first listen was not actually a first listen. So I went through like the first half, and then I had to do something else, and then I had to come back and finish the second half, and then my second listen was actually the full run through. But in my first half listen, I would say "Knock on Wood" is probably one of my favorite songs, because then when I went and finished the rest of the album, I had two other ones that I liked. Hello Sunset and Pushing and Pulling, for very similar reasons. I think those last two are very like R&B influenced for sure. I think Hello Sunset is more old school than Pushing and Pulling, but I feel like overall Knock on Wood might be the number one song for me off of this mini.
I do love how it opens with harmonies and had that snapping like doo-wop feel, and it's very like tone setting of some of the other songs. I definitely look into like the story and the lyrics and kind of what they're trying to represent, and this illusion of idealized love, right? Or love is something you gotta work on, you know? What was it about the song that stood out to you that made it your favorite?
I think on first listen I didn't have any access to translation, so I was just going off whatever I could understand. And the sound. I think for me, the selling point of Knock on Wood is that like very boppy sound, but very chill. Like I feel like, again, this whole album is very cool, super cool vibes, and the chorus of this song is so nice. There's this falsetto they do. I'm not sure who does it. It might be Wendy and Silky together. But they do this falsetto saying the title of the song, Knock on Wood. But it's so nice. It's like airy. I don't know. I feel like it adds to like a very, very smooth, but like kind of like moving your head along to the song. And the synths in this song are really, really nice. The percussion is really, really cool. I think this song leans towards the category that I like to call like almost like glittery pop in certain points. The synths have like a very like echoey sound, but it adds to like this airy vibe. I don't know. I really like the chorus. The chorus was probably the selling point for me.
We need to trademark that phrase, glittery pop.
Glittery pop.
Anita, you are going to make a ton of money, because that is an amazingly fantastic phrase to kind of describe this song and songs similar in Red Velvet's discography, right? Where there is a little bit of fun to it. I mean, the title Knock on Wood, right? It's about finding luck, making your own luck.
Yeah. But
with the very like chill, cool R&B vibes that you described. So Yeah, no, I gotta listen to it again now and kind of look out for a lot of those cues that you were mentioning because
Yeah.
I think for me, like listening to it, I don't have the same, I guess, approach, but it's only because like I don't have the expertise that the three of you have with the music.
We're no experts. By the
Oh,
way.
please, you are being far too humble. But hearing you talk about it now, it's like, oh yes, okay, I see that direction now. So I do need to go back to it because I do love that song quite a bit as well. For me, my favorite
Yeah.
song is "Pushin' and Pullin'," the one that you mentioned.
That was like my runner up.
Yeah, so that one leans into the R&B
Right.
really nicely, very smoothly, and a lot more than some of the other songs. But well, what's your take on that song? So how do you feel like that song was put together, and what were the standout moments for you?
Yeah. I think on first listen, I did a little bit of a double take because I didn't expect the verses or like the beginning leading up to the chorus to sound that way. It felt like we were kind of bare minimum, like very, very simple instrumental at first. So I thought like, oh, I don't know where this is gonna go in the chorus. But then when the chorus hits, is like an addition of a lot of instrumentals. I don't know. I feel like when the chorus hit was like, oh yes, this is definitely that R&B vibe. I can definitely hear it. And I actually went back to look at who produced this song because I thought like, oh, this is so good. And it turns out that one of my favorite K-pop producers, Kenzie, was also a part of this.
Yes,
So
you mentioned
good
her
to
so many
see it.
times. Yes, Kenzie, let's go.
Kenzie, yes. Also, like, shout out to Kenzie because she's worked with Red Velvet a lot. Like, I was going back through their discography trying to figure out, like, remind myself of, like, their songs and the progression. And I was looking at a lot of their B-sides, the track lists for their minis, their EPs, and she's been involved in a lot of stuff, and I didn't realize it at the time. I know she's worked with SM artists for a long, long, long time, way before Red Velvet, but it's nice to see it that it's still there. Like, oh yes, this is that SM sound that she brings into their groups. So nice, good.
Yes,
Pushing and pulling.
very good. Yeah, I think you described all the musical elements far more beautifully than I could have ever.
No.
Because, I agree with all of them. I think that's like my standout in a way that is I mean, I like vibe in music, you know, like I'm a little bit more chill, a little bit more R&B.
Yes.
Warren just said on the stream that he is a lot more bubblegum. So, you know,
What?
because he was comparing Bad Boy and Russian Roulette, and that was very surprising for me that he chose Russian Roulette because that's a bubblegum song.
Oh, that's true. Actually, that's a tough comparison because I feel like those two are very good, but in very different ways.
Yeah,
Like it's almost like they're each different vibes for sure.
Yeah, those are the ones that are on the complete opposite sides of the spectrum as far as the red and the velvet, right?
Yeah.
Where you have pushing and pulling here, where it is very R&B, but there are some playful moments to it where it's like, okay, I can see like the pulling of the sorry for the pun, pulling of the red, and a little bit of playfulness. I did get into the lyrics a little bit, and there is a moment where they talk about well, generally the theme of the song is working through like complications in love and conflict, right? And like communication. And there's a moment where they talk about, well, they're alluding to texting and like, you know, fighting over texting. And then at a certain point, it kind of just says like, oh, just call her, dude. Just like,
Stop waiting around.
yeah, and it's like, oh, this kind of it's fun because the song itself, if you're not listening to if you don't know the translation, it does give a very cool R&B vibe, and then you read the lyrics, like, oh, they're still figuring things out. It's like, right, so like I like that contrast between lyrics, production, the song, and then just the way that they all play it out because yeah, they just have so much charisma, just everything they do. So let's close it out on Hello Sunset, which is another vintage retro doo-woppy kind of song. The lyrics are definitely about seasons changing, kind of the end of things, but I do get a hopeful sense about the song where it's not the end of the story, it's just the end of the chapter. The story goes on. What was it about the song that had this in your top rankings?
Definitely the old school R&B vibes. I'm a little biased towards that retro sound, as we all know. But I think listening to the lyrics and kind of the placement, I guess I would say the placement of this song at the end of this album is definitely, I don't know, I feel like it made me feel like, oh yes, there's definitely more stuff coming. The vibe, yes, is like hello sunset, like things ending, but also new things beginning, I think. Very, very interesting how it was chosen to be at the very end of this mini, because I think the beginning, right, Queendom, is very much like, here we go again, this is us. In case you didn't know, this is what we're gonna do. Still in the Queendom. So I feel like I came to understand the story of the album at the end, because I feel like, okay, yeah, this is the message that we're going for, where things are ending maybe, but it's not like the end of the groove by any means. I feel like there's still much more stuff coming, and I felt that with this song. I feel like the vibes were a bit more reassuring because of that. And I was like, I picture like driving down by the seashore during the sunset, listening to this song. Like it's very like fitting. So I don't know. I feel like the organization of the songs were definitely very, very nicely done, because I feel like it makes sense with the story that's being built and with the sound. I feel like the last couple of songs we were starting to slow down a little bit, and it felt like that's the end. We're coming to a close, but it's not depressing by any means. I don't know. I feel like that's what I got.
Yeah, very hopeful, looking towards the horizon feel. Right?
Yes.
And very timely, considering we're getting this mid-August, which is about the time summer's winding down.
Right, yes.
And it does feel like things are just starting, but also, greeting the changes of the season, greeting the end of perhaps this chapter, greeting the end of this road, but understanding that there are other roads to drive on. That was a very poor metaphor. I apologize. But yes, the album progression, like you said, it does lead into like the slower aspects of it in the latter half of the album. Done very intentionally, very well planned. And it does kind of leave you just feeling good about Red Velvet being back. I think there is a little bit of an expectation that Red Velvet was going to come back with a bang, with something super wild and crazy. But I think for me, the way I rationalized that was the Reveille Festival, had Zimzalabim and Oompa Oompa.
Yeah.
And those were like experimental, weird bubblegum, which I love. But that was the last time they had like music together. And then leading into Psycho, which kind of actually fits into this direction of like the mature blend that we were talking about. And yeah, I think this is just a nice way to, again, like reintroduce Red Velvet, but also show like, okay, we've got some stuff cooking. We're gonna do some stuff coming up. So just stay tuned.
Hope for a repackage. Let's go before the year ends.
Yes. Okay. So the repackage, Kwal and I talked about this a bit. If there is a repackage, do you hope? Well, what do you think about them being more distinct about the red and the velvet? Do you think they? How do you feel like? I don't even know how to phrase this. Would you want that? Would you want something that's like very distinctly weird and experimental, and then R&B? Or is this a nice direction to continue on the blending of both concepts?
Honestly, I feel like they can do it all three at this point. I feel like maybe this is adding a different flavor, a different sound. We're like, oh, we got red, we got velvet, and now we got red velvet. So honestly, I think it might be like the best of all worlds if they were able to do everything, like the red velvet and then a mix, or somewhere in between, like the red velvet mix. Because I feel like this is kind of that proof that, oh yeah, we can do a mix. We can do something that is not distinctly red or distinctly velvet, and it makes sense for them. And I feel like they didn't lose their sound by any means. So I guess I would like it if they added that into their sound as well, where they add this next mix, this new flavor to their discography. And I think we also mentioned this in the main podcast. It makes sense now, based on the number of years they've been active. Like they're pros by this point, definitely. So they can do so many things with their concept, with their production, and I hope SM kind of sees that as well. I feel like they definitely still have more things to experiment with Red Velvet. I know aespa is also coming up, but I don't know. I feel like there's still stuff to do. I don't think necessarily when a new group comes in, older groups, already established groups, have to like take safer routes or like kind of not do a lot of experimental things. So I don't know. I hope that there's still a mix of a lot of things for Red Velvet. I don't think they have to stick to one specific sound.
All right, I have a spicy question for you.
Oh, a spicy one. Okay.
With everything we have gotten so far, as far as girl groups, established girl groups, musically, concepts, is Red Velvet's Queendom the lead for female girl group song of the year?
Oh, I feel like it can be. I haven't seen like a lot of reception, like what the general public thinks. I know that it's kind of popping off a little bit on TikTok because I saw some dance covers to the choreo, some very cute ones. So yeah, the hand knocking movement thing. That's I've seen it. So I don't know. I feel like it definitely can be. I feel like it can be, and put them in that position. But I'm not saying it very, very confidently, am I? I guess because I still feel like they have to refine that mixture a little bit more, of the red and the velvet. It was safe and it was still good. I think it's still very good. A lot of the aspects of the comeback are very, very nice. Choreo, music video, outfits, concept. But I feel like there's more that could be done. So I mean, I'm glad if it puts them in that position. I won't deny it, but I feel like if there's a repackage, we could see something even more in that direction. So that's my vague answer. That's what it is.
No, that is totally fine, because Warren will probably bring the spice and say, with the less than stellar reception of some of the other girl group songs that talk about not drinking alcohol and waking up at certain times of the day with members of the mafia, perhaps.
Okay, yeah, that one. I'm sorry, Itzy. What did they do to you? But Twice, Alcohol Free was not a bad song. I know that it's a topic of discussion for some people that either really love it or really don't love it. But I'm in the camp where I see the good in it, and I think it is not a bad song by any means. I think I have other tracks by Twice that I'm not a fan of over Alcohol Free. But yes, I disagree with Warren in a lot of these girl group songs, but not okay. I agree with the Itzy one. I'm sorry. No,
you're fine. That song is we're gonna move past that one. Just hope for they have a Loco's coming.
Loco. Hope it's not that Loco though. Hope it's a good Loco.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Red Velvet stuff. All right. So just closing out Red Velvet, with all the good vibes that we've gotten, the positive messaging, the themes, the really nice feeling of them coming back. You touched on it a little bit, but your closing thoughts on it. How did you feel about them? Back and present, and then what are you just looking forward to on a smaller scale? Not necessarily like the repackage of the music, but just on perhaps the members, perhaps who they are as people, and kind of entering this next phase in their careers and their lives.
Yeah, I feel like this bit of gap that Red Velvet had leading up to this comeback was really interesting because I feel like I didn't realize how long it had been and how rare it was because I didn't realize how active they had been for so long. So I for, I never really forgot about them as a group. I would say, like, even though they were doing their solo stuff and unit stuff and several activities by themselves and not as a group, I always feel like, oh yeah, Red Velvet. Like I know their music, I know their sound, super solid discography. And I don't know, I feel like for me it wasn't much of a reintroduction personally because I was super familiar with them and I feel like I listened to them even though they were not active together at the time. It felt more like a return, right? Like a return. And it also had that bit of nostalgia because of several things. Like I was remembering, like, I would listen to a lot of their albums, a lot of their music. In university, I feel like I got into a lot of their B-sides during university and kind of tying that time, that nostalgia kind of comes back with their comeback. I don't know, I'm super interested in their mix of Red and Velvet now. Interested in more solo stuff. I think that the little tease we got with their individual activities now, it'd be interesting to see what else they do moving forward. I liked what a lot of them did. So I feel like Joy needs a proper album. I'm sorry, but the remakes were cool. Yeah. I love the retro feel, but I feel like she could also do a little more, another second solo album for sure. And Solgi.
Yeah.
Solgi could also do one.
Modern music for Joy, for sure.
Yes. Proper, like, production specifically for her, I think, would be cool. Because she can definitely do it.
Yeah, something that she can promote. Because I wasn't aware that it was going to be, like, this much of just a throwback until, like,
right, yeah.
it happened. And we're like, oh, I guess she's not going to be on music shows doing stuff and, you know, being happy. But, yeah, I think a tease. Definitely a tease. Hopefully we get more. I think Wendy's was a very artistic expression, but she didn't properly promote that as well, I don't think. So yeah, definitely room for more, which, you know, I think it's the name of the game, right? It keeps us wanting more, keeps us staying with them. And to kind of tie a bow on everything, it does feel like a return, a welcome back. So
right, yes.
I am very happy to have them, and I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's been really nice talking about the mini album. Yeah. I like these more in-depth discussions. It was really fun.
Yeah, no, I love the way that you know go into like the music and the outfits. Getting a female perspective is always welcome. With the boys, sometimes, you know, the boys be doing boys things. I'm one of the boys, so, you know, I'm guilty, but, you know, it's cool. It's cool. We're here. Yeah, no. Anything you want to say to the nation? Just any message out to anyone who you know, is excited to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you for tuning in. Definitely come back for more of the Soju Talk Nation stuff because you guys are doing really cool, more in-depth things, which I think is very, very nice. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Had a lot of nostalgia going back through the Red Velvet discography, history. They're a really, really nice group. Very, very solid discography. So if anybody's looking to get into Red Velvet, definitely do it. They have something that you will like for sure.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to Soju Sessions on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify or your preferred podcast platform, and continue the conversation on the Soju Talk K-pop podcast Discord, and find Anita on the main show, Soju Talk.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, thank you again, Anita. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Crispy, and this has been the Soju Sessions.